Hey there, in this tutorial we're going to be looking at some basic character animation and we'll be using this Soldier BR01 rig which is available to you through Learning Fever. Now what we're going to do is not actually animate in this scene, we're going to, because this is the actual rig file, so we're going to be going to File, New Scene, don't save, and we're going to create a referenced file of our soldier rig. So if you just drag this soldier rig into your Maya project, then it will automatically come up in the scenes file. So we're going to just reference that. It's come up in wireframe, so we'll just turn on the shaded mode. Okay, now the first thing that you'll notice about this rig is that it's not in the same position that most rigs will come in, such as the T-pose, which is generally associated with rigs. That's just because this is a very basic sort of setup that I will generally use for creating things like animatics, because I don't actually need to set up any of the skinning weights on any of the joints. So we'll go ahead and start using this. First thing that I'm going to do is I can actually see all these FK handles through here, which is just cluttering up the workspace. So I'm going to hide the FK handles and hide the joints. Okay, that's much easier to look at, and we're ready to start animating. Now, we want to have this character do a basic throw. So the first thing we're going to do is give us a few more frames to work with, and then now we're going to set up just an initial pose. Firstly, I'm just going to spread the feet a little bit because at the moment they're quite close together, and also drop his center of gravity. If you find that you keep selecting the geometry by mistake, you can always just turn off select surface objects, and now you'll no longer actually select the geometry. You'll just go straight to the curves. Okay, so we're just going to go into a little bit of posing and we'll give a little bit of twist here. And what we want to do is just create a pose that looks like he's about to start throwing something. So I'm just going to work around until I've got something that I feel like. Now, it's highly advised that you actually stand up and act out these sorts of things so that you get the idea of where the body will be rotating. So I actually want this guy to be right-handed, so because I've got the right shoulder forward, I actually want to invert that. So I'm going to twist him the other way and just bring his body back, and I'll have that shoulder dip down. I'm actually kind of acting this out in my chair as I'm working, just because it's easier to get an idea of what your animated character will be doing if you use yourself as a reference. So I'm going to just toy around with these. I'm going to actually spend a little bit of time getting a nice pose that I like, a nice starting pose, and I'll see you back then in a minute. Okay, so we're back. I've started kind of tweaking the pose to how I like it. I think this is a good starting point. So what I want to be doing is just finding some of these keys, and what we're going to be doing is creating key poses to show out the basic blocking of what we want our animation to be. So at the moment I want my first pose to be at frame 1, my second pose, which will be the wind up down to its lowest point, I'm going to put at frame 17. So I'm going to drop him down a bit there and set a key. And now I'm just going to go through and make sure that I have keys on all my other controls. At frame 1, I'll go down to frame 17 and just create a key, and so that means that when I get round to posing each of these items, I will not mess up my first position. Okay, great. So we've got our first position, we're going down to our second, which I think I want to have him even pull back a little bit and lean backwards. We want to really exaggerate this movement of the hand here. You'll notice that in animation, a lot of movements are exaggerated just so that they're more easily read on screen rather than having something that is dynamically correct. So we're just going to find something that looks nice out of this. We'll keep rotating that out. We'll bring this shoulder right around and so getting your key poses is all about just experimenting with each of the different controls until you find something that's quite visually appealing. And so if we just scrub between these, we see that that's the pullback that we're going for the throw. And now our last key pose that we're wanting to put down is going to be our extension. Now, when you're working with principles like anticipation, you want the build-up of the action to be much longer than the actual action itself. So we have 17 frames worth of build-up for this throw, and then to get to the actual end of the throw, we probably only want to be going forward another 5 frames. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting in this final pose. We'll bring this shoulder right around, bring that back a bit. This shoulder, you want to get counter movements within your limbs especially, which will really emphasize the movement. So when one limb is moving forward, the other one pulls back, which is what you do when you're throwing a ball. It helps give momentum. Okay, and I've noticed that that's probably a little overturned there. And so if we just kind of scrub through, we're getting a nice sort of start here. So this is our basic key poses set up. You'll notice that we're getting some funky movement going on with the arm there, but that's because we need to change the actual motion that it's traveling. So, make sure that you keep your keys on the right frame. Delete that there. And there's still a keyframe on the shoulder. We'll bring that back. On the hand as well. Okay, so I'm going to just pause the video here and keep going through and tweaking these poses, and I'll show you the results I come up with.